And now, the Lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Low.
Good evening, folks. Good evening, and welcome to the Lowdown. It's good to have you here as always. It's good to be here. Thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight, we've got issues in the news. We're going to go over a few things that have popped up in the last week or so. So tune in, share the link, give everyone an opportunity to be here with us tonight for the Lowdown, issues in the news. You know, we're always here looking to have a good time on the Lowdown. We're always looking to talk about interesting issues in an entertaining way. Tonight we're going to do issues in the news. We've got another show, which is where we go into particular issues in some depth. But for tonight, we've got issues in the news. So folks, share the link, share that link. Let's get everyone in. Let's give everyone an opportunity to see the show. It's going to be entertaining. It always is lots of fun. Share the link, folks. Share that link. Let's get everyone in. We've got some interesting things to talk about today. We've got some interesting topics. There was, over the past few days, you will have noticed that we've got the second or the expanded Vice News documentary into Sugate, Guyana for sale. So we're going to talk a bit about that, bring you guys up to speed regarding that. In case you haven't gotten an opportunity to see that documentary yet, help you to understand why we keep calling for an investigation on this particular issue. Share the link, folks. Share the link. Let's get everyone in. Here on the Lowdown, we say that it's good to start your night on a high with Elson Low. I'm your host, Elson Low. Share the link, folks. Share the link. Let's bring everyone in. It's going to be fun. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be interesting. We've got to talk some more about Sue. Sue, we keep thinking that this is all that's going to come out, but more keeps getting revealed. So we're going to talk a bit about that. We're also going to talk a bit about the cost of living situation and the Guyana's interesting position when it comes to our oil and gas wealth, where we're seeing the projections for the country's growth go up. They've gone up to 57.8, almost 59%. Folks, if you're watching along, you may have heard in a previous estimate, I indicated that it is likely that Guyana will grow much faster than we even expected at the beginning of the year because of the high oil price. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for your families? What does that mean for the government? What does that mean for the future of Guyana? We'll chat a bit about those issues tonight, folks, as we go on through it. We're also going to talk a bit about the Amalia Falls project, the project that never seems to die, never seems to end, gift that keeps on giving. We're going to talk a bit about that project because there's some news in that regard. There's some additional information that's come out about the Amalia Falls hydroelectric project. And so we want to get you folks to be aware or keep you folks informed about that. We're going to talk a little bit about Gaisuco. We haven't talked about Gaisuco in a minute. And we're going to give you some perspective as to the direction Gaisuco is going and as to some of the changes that are needed, some of the changes taking place, and some of the changes that are needed in order to get that industry and get that organization moving in the right direction. Of course, I have previously indicated that if it were up to me, I would rename Gaisuco Guyana Oil and Gas Training Center, but that's my perspective on it, and we'll see whether the government really properly addresses that issue. But we'll get into it, folks. Share the link. Let's get everyone in. Let's give everyone an opportunity to see this show tonight. It's good to be here with you for the Lowdown. We always try to have some fun. We try to crack a few jokes along the way. We're gonna have an interesting show tonight. So share the link. Share that link. Folks, we're going to jump into one of our topics tonight, which is the cost of living situation. We're going to jump into that, and that's going to give you a sense of what's going on, but also, what you should be aware of kind of going forward. So let's get that first link up. There we go. So there's a lot of controversy earlier this week, and I'll explain it to you. But first, this headline says, having multiple men will not reduce the cost of living. I don't know if you folks caught that viral, I guess, video where an individual was indicating, a lady was indicating that if, when the rate at cost of living is going, if it doubles, because that's what she had heard that it would double, then you'll need three man, a monthly man, I believe it's a fortnightly man, and a daily man. Folks, we're not advocating that anybody go out there and get three man, as this lady is saying, but I think it just highlights the fact that it's been really difficult for a lot of people with cost of living in Ghana. Really difficult. So what we're hearing is having multiple men will not reduce cost of living. Now, I grant if you have multiple men, supposedly these men are contributing, that will help with your, I guess, income. I'll grant that, but it won't bring down the cost of living. Folks, we had to fight tooth and nail with the government to get them to raise the minimum wage. I think the last thing that I recall us saying just before they raised it was that them not raising the minimum wage filled Guyanese with disgust. And I think that is 100% spot on. Just to remind you that the minimum wage was approved by the tripartite committee comprising the government, representatives from labor, and representatives from the private sector, all the way back in January. And it took all months and months, all we had to get into June before they would approve it. So about 6 months had to pass before they would raise that minimum wage from the paltry 4,200 to the similarly paltry 60,000. We're going to have to keep this fight going. We are going to keep this fight going. This 60,000, while it is an improvement certainly from 44,000, is still so low in a country where you're seeing the cost of living skyrocket. You're seeing the cost of living go through the roof. We've got the Bureau statistics coming out to say that we've got inflation above 7.5% from last year to this year. Very high numbers, inflation in the teens when it comes to food items. Across the globe, you're seeing record high levels of inflation, 40-year high levels of inflation. The highest number in the developed economies is in the UK with 9.1%, but you're seeing high inflation in the US. I think it's about 8.6%. High inflation in the European Union, 8%. But folks, none of these countries are the fastest growing country in the world. And let me circle back, and we'll talk a bit more about this in a second. Folks, we expect it to grow at about 50% this year. Everyone is thinking, oh, we're just going to grow just under 50%. Fastest growing country in the world. But we just got an update to say that we're going to be growing closer to 60%. So that's another 10% more growth. Folks, this is a country where the oil and gas economy is booming, where things are running forward. We're seeing massive expansions. But are you seeing a massive expansion in your personal budget? Are you seeing a massive expansion in your income, your wages? That's not the case. So unfortunately, just as much as we're seeing the country grow and things move along in one sector, we're not seeing things move along in another sector. The Guyanese stock market has been doing really well. It's gotten 5 times larger over the course of just a few years. From, I believe from 2018 to now, 2017, 2018 to now, 5 times larger. People are making lots of money. But how many of you viewers own stock? How many of you viewers are 5 times richer as a result of that? I hazard not a whole lot of you. That's what's been going on for the wealthy folks in the economy, wealthy folks in the society. Meanwhile, during that same time period, we saw the minimum wage not move up. We've only just seen the minimum wage rise. Difficult for the average person. We're seeing inequality get way out of hand. And that's why this woman perhaps is saying, that you need to have 3 different man, monthly man, fortnightly man, and daily man. She was saying that even 40,000 wouldn't get you a good ration, a good trip to the supermarket. That's tough. A good trip to the market. That's tough. One of the things though that we do want to make sure that we add some perspective to, because we don't want some of these arguments that are not quite right to be carried forward, is that we don't expect to see cost of living double by the end of the year or go 4 times larger by the end of the year. That would imply 100% inflation. We're not talking about 100% inflation. But we do expect maybe another 8, maybe another 10% inflation over the course of the year. So very high numbers. and much higher than indicated by the central bank and by the Ministry of Finance. So way higher than they're saying. But we don't expect things to double. So I think this the individual who made the comments about having multiple man was a bit alarmed by hearing that cost of living will double by the end of the year. That's not what was meant. Really, it's that the total inflation, the total price increase will be twice as much by the end of the year, or more than twice as much. That is what's going to happen. So if you're seeing your food increase, let's say by $4, is $100, increase by $4, 4% inflation. We expect it'll increase by $8 by the end of the year. So that'll be 8% inflation. Folks, I don't want to bore you with the details about these things, but the long and short of it is, no, we're not going to see cost of living double by the end of the year. Yes, we are going to see prices continue to go much higher, and the government is not doing nearly enough. We've seen them say that they're going to go back to Parliament now to actually try to request additional funds. Folks, I got an interesting question for you. Folks. We've seen the cost of living issue get out of hand in these first 6 months. We've seen a war in Ukraine in these first 6 months. We've seen gas prices spike, flour prices spike, wheat prices spike, cooking oil prices spike, cooking gas prices spike. It's been tough. Folks, you mean to tell me that only now the government is going to go going back to Parliament to get additional relief? Now, is it that they put a whole lot in the national budget? The first thing I would say is no, they did not. They only put less than 1% of the national budget towards cost of living mitigation. Meanwhile, that was the biggest budget in the country's history by a large margin, almost 50% bigger than the previous one. But in addition to that, it's not like the government or anybody predicted that the war in Ukraine would cause all of this havoc. That's not something that anyone was saying earlier this year. In Guyana, no one was saying that. You weren't hearing any ministers come out and say, oh, we anticipate a conflict in Ukraine, and as a result, prices will go up. So if they didn't anticipate that this would be a big problem and cause trouble for everyone, my question is this. How can you have the same budget when there's this new crisis? You're supposed to get an additional element to your budget to match the new circumstances. You're supposed to have gone back to Parliament right away once you realize the huge price spikes that were coming, to have them approve further funds for you to spend throughout the economy. That's what you're supposed to do when you recognize that there's an unusual situation. When there was the flood, they went to Parliament for additional funds. But here we have a huge spike in the cost of living, and we've not seen them go back to Parliament for additional funds. 6 months passed before they went for additional funds. Months and months from the Ukraine war's beginning, months and months of that passed before they decided to go to Parliament for any kind of monies. And we still don't know what is the amount they're going to go to Parliament for, if it will be shared out in a way that is equitable so everyone receives it, what really they're going to do with the money, whether they're going to put it towards good initiatives like the ones that we've suggested, where we bring down the price of gas by compensating the importers, compensating the suppliers for any price that's above a certain level, where we're talking about vouchers for bus drivers and for canter operators so that they can bring down the cost of transportation, so that they can bring down the costs from the farm to the market, bring down the cost of greens as an example in this country. Those are the things we're talking about. Is that what they're going to be talking about? I have no idea what they're going to go for. It is really a question. It is much too late. We've seen even newspapers friendly to them, newspapers friendly to various other groups, saying that this is a good idea to bring down the gas price. Our programs, our ideas are good to bring down the gas price. But we're not hearing them say anything to that effect. In fact, you're hearing the opposite. Nothing can be done. Nothing can be done about these higher prices. We're just going to have to bear the brunt of it. Folks, let me remind you that I just said that Guyana's economy will be growing not at 50%, but 60%. So we're going even faster. This is the ridiculous thing, the ridiculousness that we're dealing with in Guyana right now. We're not in the same situation as a lot of the other countries that are experiencing high inflation. We are in a much better position than they are. And yet we're operating like nothing has happened, like we're not benefiting, like the government is not having huge gains out of this, out of these higher oil prices and so on. It boggles the mind, it baffles, it's beyond belief. But it is exactly what is going on, folks. It is exactly what is going on. It is very troubling that this is what we're seeing in the country, and that's why you're hearing, ladies say you gotta got three man, three, 1, 2, 3. Anyway, folks, let's jump across to the next slide. We're gonna talk a bit more. We're talking a bit more. So let's lean in a little bit to this oil and gas situation. We were seeing that Guyana has actually become the country with the second most barrels of oil per person of any in the world, with 11 billion barrels of oil. Far more than Saudi Arabia, far more than most of the other countries, far more than Venezuela, Iraq, all these other countries. In terms of barrels of oil per person, far more. Now, what does that mean with barrels of oil per person? What it means is that we here in Guyana will be able to produce more barrels of oil per person than in almost any other country. That means that in a country where, let's say, you have, for every barrel of oil produced, you have 5 people. In Guyana, it might be 1 person to 1 barrel of oil produced. So whereas one country might have had to split the revenues from their production amongst 5 people, in Guyana, you can have 1 person receive all of those revenues from a barrel of oil a day. Now, that means that there's going to be much more government revenue than in other countries per person. So much more funds, much more capacity to make life better for the average Guyanese. That's what you're going to see. But oil, as we've said before on this show, is a funny thing, and it can make things get worse or it can make things get better. Right now, do you feel like things are better or do you feel like things are worse? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Are things better or worse? Are you paying more for pretty much everything that you have to purchase? Or are you paying less? Are you paying more? It seems to me that most people are paying more. Yes, some people have gotten jobs in the oil and gas industry, but it seems to be quite a lot of foreign folks that are getting these jobs, and that's a real question. Are you someone that is able to get a job in the oil and gas industry to earn big bucks? And if you're not someone who's able to earn these big bucks, and if you're not seeing your salaries increase, and if you're seeing the cost of living go up, you have to ask yourself, what is going on? How can we be getting so much in terms of the oil and gas industry, and yet your lives are not moving forward? What does that mean? What does that say to you? Well, folks, you can have your own opinion and your own perspective, but to me, that says that the economy and the society is totally being mismanaged, that the way that the society grows, the way the economy grows is totally being mismanaged, that our priorities are not in the right place, that we've not balanced things well so that people feel that they are benefiting as the oil and gas economy kicks into gear. And I'll tell you an interesting element of this entire thing. This goes back to the national budget that we saw passed, where it was monstrous. The previous budget is 300 and something billion. This is 500 and something billion, way bigger. All the funds in the NRF basically were used. We decided to use all the funds that were in National Resources Fund, all the oil monies, the revenue from the oil monies from the oil that we already sold. That has now been used. What's it been used on? Capital, infrastructure projects. Now, infrastructure projects are very important. Don't get me wrong. They're great value to society. They help businesses to improve. They help businesses to produce. That's all well and good. But the flip side of it is that you have to control how quickly you grow your spending in these areas. It's not just about dumping a load of money there and neglecting other areas. This is not a circumstance where you're seeing low inflation, low cost of living. Everything is running smoothly in the country. People aren't crying out because of the cost of living. This is a situation where you're seeing the highest increases in cost of living for 40 years in pretty much all over the world. The highest increases in the cost of living for 40 years. And in that circumstance, you're going to ignore the problem largely and put all your focus on infrastructure. When folks, you and I know that you can't eat roads. You can't eat roads. This is future gains, yes, but this is a crisis scenario. This is a scenario unlike any we've seen for about 40 years. The government has decided to just ignore that. They're going to do what they do. They're going to put their funds towards these capital projects, towards infrastructure, and so on, to the extent that they're going to neglect the average person's experience, the cost of living situation, totally neglect it. And what's the result of that neglect? Punishment. Somebody was saying the other day, things is not nice at all. The grammar may not be right, but the sentiment is right. And that's why you're getting a little bit of this you got to have 3 man in order to survive here in Guyana dynamic. That's what's going on. It's rough out there, folks. It doesn't have to be rough out there. That's what we're trying to convey to you. This is a time of plenty. Now imagine, throw your mind back to when Guyana wasn't producing oil. Look at the circumstances we've got today, where you've got high prices at the pump, where you've got high costs of for vegetables and for daily foods, where you've got hardly any raise in the minimum wage. Look at how bad you would have, the outcome, the prospects for the country would have looked very, very terrible. We would have really been a bit concerned about the future. But instead, we're the fastest growing country in the world, and we just saw an increase in the projection of how quickly we're going to grow. We're the fastest, and we just saw an increase. Was that a 20% increase in the rate at which we're expected to grow? So we're going to grow at 60% now instead of 50%. Man, this is unbelievable. Unbelievable. We are lucky to be in a country that has this much oil where we're seeing production. Well, do you feel lucky? Do you feel like you're benefiting from any of this? Do you feel like you're living in the country with the second most barrels of oil per person? That's not the way that many people feel. We in the PNCR will ensure that you feel like you are a partner in the future of Guyana, that you are being given the tools to succeed, and that you are benefiting directly from the growth in our country. We have talked about salary top-ups, which is where if you earn below a certain level, you get some money on top of your salary. Government gives you some money on top of your salary to bring you above the poverty line, to bring you within a good standard of living. We've talked about removing income tax from those on the lower ends of the tax threshold. The government even indicated that they receive more revenue from income tax now than before. We're talking about making sure that for lower income people, the opposite is true. You're paying less tax. We're talking about student stipends. We've seen the government recently say that they're giving people jobs for you come in for 10 days and you work a little bit here and there and you get a money. We're talking about substantial stipends. We've always been talking about stipends for students. And the point of that is because we want to engage in a partnership with people, not just trapping you in a dead-end job, but engaging in a partnership with you in training and these types of things so that you can get a high-paying job that will last you. This is, do you really want to be making $40,000 for the rest of your days? I don't think anybody wants that. I think really people want the opportunity to be able to get a good job, a high-paying job. That's the direction that this country really needs to go, and that's the direction that the PNCR intends to take things. That's why we've got these types of policies. Let's jump across to the next slide, folks, as we tie down the inflation story, the cost of living story, the national growth story. So here we have it. Guyana's GDP projection has gone through the roof. Now, what I want to just narrow down a little bit, folks. We've talked quite a bit about this already. What I want to narrow a bit here is this. We are seeing right now Guyana receive elevated, high prices for the crude oil that it gets when these oil lifts take place, when this oil is extracted. So we typically will get a ship come and get 1 million barrels of crude oil. We'll sell that in the open market. We were expecting, or at least international agencies, when they first dropped Guyana's growth prospects, were expecting to see Guyana grow at around 50%, but also to see a $74 a barrel oil price. That's what they were expecting to see. What we've been seeing over the course of the year is that oil has been consistently up around or above $100 a barrel, going as high as $139 a barrel for an instant, but being around 120 for some time. And in fact, one of the shipments of oil that we've got is going to be sold for $120 a barrel. So instead of bringing in 74 million US, it's bringing in 120 million. 120 million. Is that a little bit more or a lot more? It's a lot more, folks. That is a serious amount more. Is that 45 million, $46 million more? That's way more. And this is US we're talking about. That is a serious chunk of change. And that's going to be the case, it would appear, over the course of the year. Now, there may be some volatility, we know that. But there's also a possibility, which we've discussed before on other shows, that oil may head really right through the roof because of what's going on with Russia. As you know, the war in Ukraine has caused some sanctions, or as you might not be aware, this has caused some sanctions to be imposed on Russia. And there's pending, I believe it's on December 4th or 5th, early in December, there's going to be likely a price cap that is going to be placed on Russian exports of crude oil to the European Union and so on. Now, what that means is that they're not going to pay above a certain price for Russian oil in an effort to dry up the revenues that are received by the Kremlin from those barrels of oil. That, however, may, and this is the question that's being asked, there's a lot of concern around this, result in the Russians refusing to provide oil altogether to those countries. This would cause the oil price to spike massively, going perhaps as high as $380 a barrel. That is the concern. Now, you may say, oh, the Russians, they'll keep supplying 100%. This is a crazy scenario. It wouldn't happen. But already, we're seeing the Russians reduce their supply of natural gas to a lot of countries. And that has raised a lot of questions. There's also a pipeline, the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, that has been shut down for maintenance. There's concern as to whether or not when it is opened back up, there will be gas flowing again to Europe. Now, if they're having trouble getting natural gas supplies for one reason or another, doesn't that say to you that it is possible they may not get oil supplies? And if we don't get those oil supplies in the market, that will send the price through the roof again. Folks, we have talked about a mechanism to bring oil prices down and to keep them down. That is where we compensate suppliers where the price is higher than what we determine it should be. That will allow consumers, to benefit from the lower price, If we see a spike in oil prices as a result of Russia pulling back on production, is the government really going to maintain its stance that nothing more can be done? That's what they said, nothing more can be done. Are they really going to do that? Is it going to be that absurd? Or are they going to buckle and admit that we were correct in our approach and that we recognize that there are risks that oil prices will get much higher? And this is not just a risk to you in your pocket paying higher prices at the pump. That's one thing. Another thing that there's a real risk of is that you're going to see prices at the market go up because that same canter that has to bring the greens from the farm to the market has to pay much more for its gas. As much as a half of inflation, some measures have indicated, has been due to the increase in oil prices, where you've seen oil in just a short space of time essentially double from early last year to now. Double. Therefore, that has been one of the things that's driven prices up so much. If we see oil prices go up again, and considerably so, is the government really not going to capitulate and agree that we were correct in assessing that there is risks that need to be addressed, that there could be a risk of really high oil prices? Folks, this is in my opinion, a mistake by the government. I believe that they need to look at our proposals. Newspapers and so on have indicated that these are good proposals, various newspapers, and they need to take them seriously. We cannot allow Guyanese to suffer the full brunt of higher prices, cost of living woes that follow that when we are making a lot of money. Can you imagine if Guyana is making, a couple of $100 per barrel from one of our shipments because there's a big spike in price? That would be massive. But if you're not going to redistribute that through these mechanisms to help to ensure that local people don't suffer from that, then you're gonna have people out there with feeling the pain. And in addition to that, one is what's really concerning a lot of economists is that there's a lot of risk that's associated with higher prices, that people will cut back on spending, cut back on traveling, cut back on production, and that will lead you in the non-oil economy to a recession. There's a lot of concern of that. What happens in a recession? People lose their jobs. The economy shrinks. Things get worse. People suffer more from the cost of living. That's what happens in a recession. People don't have jobs, so they can't afford to buy things. We don't want that to happen. That's why we've put in place policies to deal with these risks. The government can choose to ignore them if it likes, but it does so at its own risk, because there is a scenario in which we could see these oil prices bump even higher, even though for right now they're a little bit calmed down, just around about $100 a barrel. So that's one side of this whole thing, folks. One side of this whole thing. Now that we've looked at the cost of living puzzle and how this really affects you, we want to swing around to some of the other issues that are burning and that have come up over the course of the last week. So let's get the next slide up and we'll have a quick chat about those. Okay, so the Chinese Association distanced itself from the Vice News documentary, which was, looking called Guyana for Sale, which concerned a certain gentleman named Sue. A certain gentleman named Sue that, apparently Jagdi was looking for this guy Sue, can't find him, looking for him to throw him out of his house or to sue him. Jagdi says he's gonna sue, but people want to know how come he can't find Sue to sue. Say that 5 times quick. It's a real tongue twister, right? So Jagdi can't find Sue to sue. Can't seem to locate Sue. Nobody in Ghana can seem to locate Sue. Where is Sue? Let me answer this question. Does the fact that it is difficult for anyone to locate Sue make you believe Sue or not believe Sue? That's the question. Does it make it more likely that you believe what Sue is saying or less likely that you believe what Sue is saying? The fact that nobody can lay their hands on Sue since this documentary has come out. Now, it could be that none of these things are true. There isn't a widespread scheme across this government and involving the vice president to take and engage in corrupt, take bribes and engage in corrupt schemes. It could be, sure. But we need an investigation to find out. It could be that Sue didn't know what he was talking about. Could be that he was bluffing people. Could be that when Sue says that that Jagdeo likes to receive his money in cash, Sue didn't know what he was talking about. It could be that when Sue said to the person, because there's a point in the Vice interview where one of the person that's involved in the setup says, to Sue, but how will I know that Jagdeo is the one getting the cash for the bribe? How will I know this? And Sue says, this is my favorite line in it, you don't have to worry about that. I will go with you and we will give Jagdeo the money together. That's what Sue indicates. Now, we don't know if this is the truth. We don't know. But what we do know is that we can't lay our hands on Sue. What we do know is that alone is enough of a reason for an investigation. And we've heard the government say, oh, no, it can't be an investigation. That'd be crazy. You can't get that. But we're going to roll in on that in a minute, folks. We're going to roll in on that in a minute. One thing that I also want to make you aware of coming out of these Vice allegations is this. There is an allegation that there is a widespread and structured scheme to launder money coming out of China to be used for bribes in Guyana. Now, in the course of that, it was indicated that both the president and the members of local government have been bribed. That was kind of the indication. Now, of course, we don't know, but again, how do we know? We get an investigation, that's how we know. We're calling for an investigation into these things. But it really shows that it is possible that there's a very widespread organized scheme to consistently bribe public officials. Consistently. And in fact, one of the things that's said in the Vice documentary is not that you need to pay bribes in order to get things done, but rather that nothing gets done unless bribes are paid, which would mean that everything is involved, that there's a wide range of things that are involved. We don't know, but we need investigations to find this out. I indicated on one of my other shows that Operation Car Wash was started off as a small anti-money laundering operation in Brazil. ended up spreading to the point that it involved many people in Brazil's political class, a wide range of political people. It is possible that that is what is going on here. Sue even said, oh, he's close to other people in the administration. He's close to many people. That's what Sue said. We need an investigation. We need an investigation, but in addition to that, we need Jagdeo to step aside or be fired to ensure that we have a nice impartial investigation. Can't afford this. Let's get the next slide up, viewers. All right, so the Vice News allegations, we're rolling on here, and it continues to be concerning. It continues to be absolutely concerning. What we're seeing as well is that the president has come out and finally said that there needs to be an investigation. The government has come out and said there needs to be an investigation. All right, so there's going to be an investigation. But let's ask a few questions here. Very recently, we got the impression from the government that there was going to be no investigation. There's two reasons that we got this impression. One is that they refused to commit to an investigation in the wake of the allegations. And two is that we heard previously that there would be an investigation and nothing came out. This is when the first video came around. We heard the government say there's going to be an investigation. There was nothing at all that happened. So now it seems that the government is caught on and finally decided, oh, there needs to be an investigation. But one of those, this is one of those situations where you gotta wait and see what the government will do, because first of all, will there actually be an investigation? I don't know. We'll have to see. Will there actually be an impartial investigation? I don't know. We'll have to see. One of the things that has been suggested is that we could have some foreign investigators come in, work along with our local investigators, whether it's the police or SOCO or something, to get this done. But of course, if foreign folks come here and we have an impartial investigation, if the investigation is successful, that will mean that a lot of senior political folk will find themselves in the fire. Are we going to get that kind of a proper investigation? So the first thing is, are we going to get an investigation? And the second thing is, are we going to get a meaningful, proper, impartial investigation? I don't know. We'll have to see. This is one of those things where I am going to wait until it happens before I really believe that it's going to happen. I'm going to wait and see. And I would love to see an investigation, but until I actually see people being investigated, I don't know. This is something that, the government really raises eyebrows around. Why wouldn't you want to investigate something like this, something as serious as this, something with this level of specificity? And that's one of the things that is so interesting about this Vice News report. It's not just, someone saying, you can bribe Jagdeo through me. It's not just something like that. There's a wide range of people in Ghana. I'm sure you could say, you can bribe Jagdeo through me. Would say something like that. What is interesting is the level of specificity, how specific this reporter got. You got statements from various Chinese business people talking about corruption. You got statements from Su himself talking about corruption. You got specific information from Su as to how bribes are paid. You got specific commitments from Su that you will see the person who is involved be bribed because you and him are going to go and give the money together. You've got specifics as to how the money is brought in to actually be used for these bribes. All of that is explained in detail in this documentary. This is why we're saying we need a proper investigation. This is very specific information. And I know that, some folks may say, this is anti-Chinese sentiment or something. And of course, we've heard the Chinese embassy come out to say that Vice News is painting them in a negative light. But I think that even the Chinese government, given some of the allegations, would want to launch their own investigations. Why? Because in the course of the conversation with the alleged money launderer, he indicated that he also launders money that comes from Chinese officials, whether they've been involved in illegal activities, and that they're able to circumvent China's laws around bringing capital out to the country. It seems to me that that is a big problem. That is a big problem. And I would hope that the Chinese government would launch their own investigation to ensure that that is not what is going on. I'm sure that they want to be their citizens to be rule of, law-abiding citizens who are to the benefit of all in the society. But it sounds like, or it's possible that people have been avoiding paying tax in China, avoiding going through legal means to transfer money, avoiding the laws around how much money can be transferred in China to come out to other countries. And that these things may indeed be completely illegal. In fact, in the interview, the alleged launderer says that he is concerned about taking certain types of money because there's a risk that he would be arrested. There's a risk he would be arrested. We believe that there should also be an investigation in China into these allegations. I think that is obvious. If you're seeing the potential that in your own country there's a mass effort, a robust effort, like I said, every day, to bring in monies illegally into Guyana, to take monies out of China, that is, I think, something worth investigating. And I tell you what, this isn't going to be the only place that they're laundering money for. There's going to be many countries if they're laundering this money. We need an investigation to find out. That's the only way we're going to know what exactly is going on. A proper investigation into this. Let's get the next slide up there. Okay. So one of the things, of course, that is mentioned in Sugate is a hydroelectric dam. It's mentioned. Amalia Falls is mentioned. And specifically, Sue says, when they're talking about these funds and so on, talking about the potential bribe to Jack Deota, in the course of that allegation, Sue says other amounts before this have been much bigger. Like the oil company. The hydroelectric dam takes tens of millions. That's what Sue says. Tens of millions. Is this tens of millions of Guyana dollars? Is it tens of millions of US? Is it tens of millions of yuan? These are some really interesting questions, folks. Really interesting questions. That's one of the real concerns coming out of Sugate. Now, the coalition PNCR has spoken about the oil block auction in saying that we shouldn't have any oil block auction so long as a man like Sue is coming out here to say that he's already paid money for an oil company, which would mean there's a possibility that the entire auction is a sham and that these blocks have already been assigned. We need greater transparency. We need investigations to identify the truth. We've put forward the measures that we think need to be involved in order to ensure that level of transparency for the oil block auction. That's something that we've put out there. We should never be hearing coming out of a man like Sue's mouth in this context where we're talking about bribes. Oh, I already bribed somebody for the oil block. I mean, for the oil company. That's crazy. That's absolutely unacceptable. But going back to Amalia Falls, that's the allegation, is that there was a bribe taken for Amalia Falls. Tens of millions for Amalia Falls. Folks, wouldn't you like to have tens of millions? Is it that, and this is why we need an investigation, is it that our policymakers, our high elected officials have been taking these large-scale bribes? Is it that a certain person has been taking bribes for years and years and years in connection with this project, and that is why the project will not die? We don't know this, but we need to find that out. And so what are we hearing? Amalia Falls has to go back to the drawing board. Folks, this is like 10 years we're dealing with Amalia Falls. Like 10 years. And you mean to tell me it has to go back to the drawing board? Back again to the drawing board? What is going on? This is unbelievable. This is crazy. Back to the drawing board yet again? Folks. This is extremely concerning. And the thing about it is, we could have already had a solar installation cutting the cost of electricity being used in Guyana during the day, cutting that cost right down. We could have had that built already. Probably year one, we could have built that. But here we are, getting into year 2, year 3, and we still don't have the hydroelectric dam. We still don't have the gas shore project. We still don't have new, cheaper, green electricity. We've been talking about Amalia, carried further, for about 10 years, more than 10 years. And yet, we don't have a single watt of hydroelectric energy, hydroelectric electricity to show for it. We don't have a single. In fact, we're now going back to the drawing board. We're going to review whether we can retender this thing, how we're going to be able to get contractors to buy into this thing. And this is just the beginning. There's a lot of risks associated. They're saying that Amalia Falls will only cost 700 million, but there's some estimates that say that the transmission line to connect the coast to Amalia might cost as much as $900 million. Some estimates will indicate that. So I don't know how you're going to get this $700 million cost. It's very possible that it will cost that much. There's even estimates that put the real cost of Amalia at about $3 billion. $3 billion US, not 700 million US. That's what some technical estimates have. So, this is going to be a real question, and whether or not we're going to be able to finish this project is a real concern. So to be going further on it rather than operating with solar alternatives, to me, is beyond belief. You could easily use the solar in the day, the gas to shore in the evening, and then you can balance and add with other power sources as you go to manage your consumption. That would be simple. That would cut the cost right down to the ground. That would have very, very low risks associated with it. This project has incredible risks. And we've been trying with it for 10 years now. And still, we have to go back to the drawing board. I mean, it's unbelievable. What is going on? Now, I don't know that the reason that this has been persisting is because Jagdeo has been taking a bribe. I don't know this. We need an investigation to find this out. We have an allegation that that is what is going on. Tens of millions of the bribes have been paid for Amalia Falls, for the hydroelectric plant. We have an allegation that that's the case from somebody who was renting and living next to the vice president, somebody who was a good friend of him, somebody who he says gets all the support, somebody who was in his house, somebody who brought somebody into his house to discuss these types of things, to discuss business and so on. We don't know, however, innocent till proven guilty, that the vice president has been taking these bribes over the course of the 10 years. We don't know this. But we need to find out. We need to find out. We shouldn't just keep hearing, back to the drawing board all over again with Amalia Falls, and not ask ourselves what is going on, where the investigation is, and whether there's some serious issues with this project when it comes to these, corruption and so on. Those are all questions that need to be asked. Investigations we need to have to answer those questions so we know the truth, because it is incredibly disturbing, and it's been disturbing for a long time. And it's somehow, if I had told you, 10 years ago that we would still be talking about Amalia, and it would actually be even more concerning than it was 10 years ago, would you believe me? It's just gotten worse and kept getting worse. How? Boggles the mind. It's just kept getting worse. Anyway, folks. So that's what's going on. Let's get the next slide up. All right. So now we're gonna lean into this question of what's going on with Gaisuko. Now, in a way, Amalia Falls Hydro reminds me a bit of Gaisuko, which is, I think, not a positive. And the reason I say that is that, how many times have you heard we have to go back to the drawing board with Gaisuko? We need change in Gaisuko. We need to adjust things at Gaisuko. We need to reform at Gaisuko. How many times have you heard that? How many times have you heard various governments, and most recently this government, say, we're reinvesting in Gaisuko. We're going to buy more equipment for Gaisuko. We're going to put new funds toward Gaisuko. How many times have you heard that? Has it been one time, 2 times, 3 times? Or has it been nonstop for like 20 years? Has it been nonstop for a prolonged period of time? Look at that graph, folks. You're going to see that the highest production that we've got in recent history is in 2020 when the coalition was in office. And then after that, Gaisuko has had massive drops in production. Massive drops. Now, during the same period, billions, tens of billions of Guyana dollars have been invested in Gaisuko. The same period. So while we're continuing to see money spent, we're seeing the actual production of the company fall. Is that the way that things are supposed to go? You spend more, you get less? That's what we expect? That's what we want out of this? Or is that wholly unacceptable? We're even hearing the union call for a management shakeup. The union? No, not us. The union is saying they need a management shakeup. What is going on with Gaisuko? We're seeing right now people complain that there's a sugar shortage. This is a sugar producing country, and you have a sugar shortage. And you're spending billions and billions of dollars on the company that produces the sugar. You see how ridiculous the situation is? You're spending tens of billions of dollars on the company that produces the sugar. You have a sugar shortage, and you're a sugar producing country. Whoo, 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 child, whoo. And the thing about this is we've actually seen Gaisuko's production target reduced. Even as money is being poured into it, the production target has been reduced quite a bit, reduced about 30% between last year and this year. And on top of that 30%, we've seen Gaisuko massively miss its targets. Massively miss its targets. Got just around halfway of what its target is supposed to be. That's how big, big miss we're talking about. That's why that chart had a very sharp downward slant. Let's get the chart back up. Let's show viewers what's going on. Viewers, do you see from 2020 onward that sharp downward slant? Are you seeing this, viewers? Gaisuko, you see that right on the right-hand side of your graph there? You're seeing a sharp downward slant. You're seeing production amounts drop and drop and drop. Why is this happening? Under the coalition, you're seeing production go up right up until 2020. Their production isn't going up. But instead, the opposite is happening. While at the same time, more money is being pumped into the Gaisuko. This is the tale of Gaisuko, which, like I said, reminds me of the tale of Amalia. It is a tale of consistent underperformance. It is a tale of wondering why we're doing things that make no sense. It is a tale that I think has distressed so many Guyanese, not just those average Guyanese citizens who are propping up the industry with their taxes, but even Gaisuko workers must be distressed at the state of their company, at the state of what is going on. They must be distressed. This is the lowest ever production by Gaisuko. The lowest ever production in the first part of this year and through part of last year. Incredibly low numbers. Of course, yes, you had the flood, but they reduced their targets and they still can't meet those targets. Unbelievable. And this country produces sugar, and this country pumps money into Gaisuko, and this is the result you get. This is the furthest thing from acceptable. We've even seen the president say that more must be done, there must be progress. But I don't know about you, but that doesn't look to me like progress. I could be wrong. It could be that that's a form of progress with which I am not familiar. It could be that this is a form of progress I'm not familiar with. Reduced amounts of production and same money, a lot of money is being pumped into the industry. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But I'll give you another interesting thing. I started off earlier in this program by saying if it were up to me, I'd rename Gaisuko the Guyana Oil and Gas Training Center or something to that effect. We are now seeing the government open up a Port Morant facility, oil and gas training facility in the next couple of years, next year or so. Now, it strikes me that this is something that should have been immediately dealt with the moment that the government came into office, if it is that they want to get it done. Why? Because Guyana is an oil producer, because Gaisuko is a tricky enterprise, has been a tricky enterprise this entire time, and because it is obvious that we need to take some Gaisuko workers and refocus them on the oil and gas industry. I think that is pretty straightforward. We're also hearing the government talk about importing labor. Importing labor. You've got a corporation which is struggling. Thousands and thousands of workers who need to feed their families. You've got a great need for workers in some of the other industries, whether it's oil and gas, whether it's other industries connected to that. And your first thought wasn't, oh, let's train folks. You're waiting 2 years in before you start this training program. You're looking at a Gaisuko which is not doing well. And this finally is what you're thinking. It's not like this is the first day that Gaisuko has been doing poorly. It's been having a rough go for a long period of time. And this Oil and Gas Training Institute should have always been on the cards, number one. And number two, there's a question as to whether it's going to be training enough people, the volume of people, to help Gaisuko workers transition from sugar to oil. We in the PNCR have been pushing for this. In fact, what we said in the last budgetary allocation for Gaisuko is that those monies should be put towards training for Gaisuko workers in the oil and gas industry. That is what we said. We maintain that position, that we need to put monies towards helping Gaisuko workers retrain. It doesn't look good the way that the corporation is in, the state the corporation is in right now. It doesn't look good. There's reason to be concerned. And a lot of people depend on those jobs. It strikes me, and I could be wrong here, viewers. What I could be saying makes no sense. But it strikes me that your first priority as a government should be ensuring that those Guyanese who are here are able to train to get access to the job opportunities that are coming as a result of the oil and gas economy and the various expansions connected to that. And that it shouldn't be that your first thought is, oh, we have to import labor. Of course, you will need to import some labor, but you can't do that without making strident efforts to take your local people and give them opportunities to earn. You can't do that. It strikes me again that it is very obvious that this is what needs to be done. Very obvious. But I don't know if it's obvious to the government. And so here we are, Gaisuko at its lowest ebb, and training program years late, and questions about the future of Guyana and where we're actually heading. Folks, we shouldn't have these types of anxieties. We should be optimistic. We are growing at nearly 60% this year. That is a cause for celebration. And yet here we are, concerned. On that note, folks, that's the end of the lowdown for tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. We're going to catch up with you on Saturday night on the lowdown. And, it's always fun. And thank you for starting your night on a high with Elson Low.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.